Hello and welcome to English 1301, Week 5. This week we are beginning Module 3, the essay number 3, Analysis Essay. All right, let's get into it. So, as we went through the autobiographical narrative and then the evaluation essay, our third one is going to be a visual analysis. And start here with the basic features of a visual analysis, or at least analysis essay. So we've done away with the color coding, and we've now just moved on to the listing. So the first things first is you're going to choose the image that you wish to analyze. This image can be uh, anything that is school appropriate, so no pornography. It also cannot be an image that uh, you've taken personally. It needs to be a commercial image out there in the world. It has to be something that has some sort of message that is readily identifiable from the picture. So it can't just be a picture of a pretty flower or a pretty girl or a picture of a group of people. It has to have some sort of meaning and message to it, and it should be visually interesting. Now, it can be an ad for something. Those are usually good because they have a discernible message and there's usually trying to tell a story of some sort. It really should not be a picture from an anime or comic book or something that you have to explain who the characters are. That takes too much. That's too much for the scope of this image. It just or this paper. It really just needs to be a visually striking image. So we'll go over that again in a bit. But the first things first is you're going to choose the image that you're going to analyze. And then, of course, your essay will include your introduction, which has your thesis statement. And your thesis statement for this is going to be what is the message of the image, or how does the image convey its message? So, again, it would be the message of the image is blank, and then you tell three ways that the image conveys its message. And we're going to go over some strategies for doing that. So after your introduction, you'll have your description of the image. This is going to be a little bit different from other essays in that you're not just describing the topic, you're going to actually be describing your image, which you will include at the end of your paper. Again, your image will go at the end of the paper, not at the beginning, but at the end. I would like to see your picture after I have read through the description that you've written of it. So that's introduction, then a description of the image. Then you're going to discuss the three ways that the image conveys its message. And it could be that it's written on it. It could be words. For example, if it's an ad, it could be through any number of ways and the other strategies that we'll go over in a bit. And then finally, you're going to write your conclusion, which is wrapping it up and restating your thesis statement, which is the image, what the image conveys, the message of the image, and how it does that. So it's just the basic features. Now, there is a lot of information for this particular essay. Let's start looking at the information that we have here in the module. So we'll get to the assignments last, but uh, beyond the basic features of an analysis essay, we have this really excellent website, and it's how to write an analytical essay, or at least in an outline format. Well, the analytical essay outline website was up earlier. I don't know if they're just doing server maintenance right now, but it's a really great website that helps you write an outline to your essay. I will double check this tomorrow and see if it does not come back up. And if it doesn't, I'll replace it with something else. But this is when it comes up, it's a really good website. Now, this document will definitely be here. So it's how to write a visual analysis essay. And this particular one was a website. I had to go to the Wayback Machine and get it back, but it's really good because it tells you exactly what a visual analysis paper looks like and what you should be able to expect from it. So it tells you what it is and what it isn't. It gives you an example outline. So if the other website doesn't work, this is just fine. This will be here. This is actually a document. It tells you how to describe your images. what sort of images you should analyze. You can analyze artwork or advertisement or part of a video, like a still from a video or a photograph. And you're going to be looking at the image and talking about it, describing it. And then down here, this is where the real gold of this particular document is that these are the visual elements of design. In other words, it talks about how all the different ways that an image can use to try to convey its message and how it's put together. So, for example, the composition is how the image is put together, and questions to look at how where's the main figure, where are they in response in relation to other figures, and why it's important. Um, Other elements are focal points, like where is your attention drawn to in the image. Color, the use of color or the lack of color can be meaningful. It can be used to draw your attention. It can affect the tone of the image. Uh, some colors are symbolic. For example, red is symbolic. We use that to indicate love, but we also indicate use it to indicate things like stop. Where the lines are in an image make a difference. If there's a texture, for example, if it is a painting, textures and brush strokes can make a difference. Shapes can have meaning, different forms, degree of light and dark, the size in relation to things, how big something is compared to something else in the image. Symbolic elements such as symbols, like religious symbols or other symbols that we have different meanings, and sometimes they have different meanings to different cultures. Then it gets into principles of design, such as balance, emphasis, movement. Is there a natural movement in the image? Is there a pattern or repetition, a variety in rhythm, proportion? Is something bigger on one side of the picture than the other? Is something supposed to be in the foreground or the background, etc. And then it gets into analyzing the meanings of the different images and different questions and things that you can keep in mind when you're analyzing it. Then how to start your paper. It talks about making your claim, which would be your thesis statement, which you claim the message is of the image. And then the visual composition. This is where you're going to describe the image. Different. Does it have any appeals? Is it appealing to your emotions? Is it appealing to authority? Is it trying to sell you something? Because usually the message of the image, if you're trying to sell something, can be just that. It's trying to sell you something. It wants you to buy something. So then you have to figure out how is it trying to get you to buy it. It also talks about examining context and history if it's a historical image, exactly how to analyze historical images, and pre-writing for visual analysis of historical context, and then citing your images correctly. It will talk about there. I believe there was some up here about uh, talking. It talked about actually looking at paintings, but I could be wrong. It does give a little bit of that. So it's really actually a really good document, how to write a visual analysis essay. Now, this whole folder here, image analysis strategies, is important because this is all the different ways that an images can be analyzed. There's a lot to go through. I'm not going to go through it word for word, but I do suggest you take some time and spend some time with this week because you'll be writing this paper next week. So tips for analyzing advertisements. Uh, a lot of these don't just pertain to advertising. A lot of the different ways to analyze advertising pertains to all images, and it just makes good sense to go through those and look for different messages. It's a great way to figure out what the message is. You could analyze it as if it were an advertisement. So this article talks about how to analyze the advertisements. And the next one is how messages persuade through appeals to pathos, logos, and ethos. In other words, logic, uh, emotions, which is pathos, and ethos is ethics. So here you go: logical appeal, ethical appeal, emotional appeal. And those are the three principal methods of persuading an audience. So, and this table here is kind of a little screwed up. It's basically goes like this, but the bigger and more important information is really up here. It's basically a basic introduction to pathos, logos, and ethos. Again, another how to analyze an advertisement. Um, this one is just a different table. It says, how does the ad draw the target audience in by helping them to identify the ad's problematic story or situation? Uh, how does the ad create a field of values, beliefs, or aspirations that serve as windows into a more fulfilled life? How do the ad's images and words work together to create the desired persuasive effect? Questions to look at when you're looking at an ad image in particular. But again, you can apply these to just about any image. But it's just different questions and things to consider when you're looking at images to try and figure out what they mean or what their meaning is. And then I have here also strategies for analyzing rhetorical context of documentary photographs. In other words, if you just have, um, there's a lot of documentary photographs, famous photographs even, that people have chosen to use in the past. And these are good strategies to look at those. So consider the photographer's purpose and context in making the photograph. The original context for displaying it. Where was it originally viewed? Was it in a magazine? Was it on a website? Where was it? And the cultural context for interpreting the photograph. How does the photograph appear at a particular place and influence your impression of it? So again, more things to think about when you're trying to figure out what the message of an image is. There's also persuasive effects of photographs and other images. This talks about what it looks like about people in portraits, people in scenes, landscapes and nature, distance from the subject, etc. Framing, very important. What's the focus on? The light and scale and space and shape. Lines and colors as well. Also, we have strategies for analyzing the particular elements of paintings. This is what I was thinking of. So uh, the width and height division into parts proportional relationship of the impression of the painting. In other words, how did the painter do this? Did they use particular brush strokes? Did they use a particular medium? For example, oil painting is often thicker and can be used to give depth to an image that a watercolor may not be able to give, uh, etc. So again, more strategies there. But there's an entire folder of strategies, and of course, you are welcome to go to the internet to find more strategies for determining what the message of an image is. Important down here is also how to cite your image. And make sure these are not hidden from you guys. You're going to have to cite your image from wherever you get it. Uh, Usually it's probably from the internet. You're probably going to not get it from a book. You will have to include a copy of the image in your paper. So you will have to screenshot it at some point, or get a copy of that file, and you're going to put that in your paper. But this is how you're going to cite this. I'll most likely go over this again next week. But this talks about here a works cited, how that works, your works cited information. This is a basic works cited for an image or literally anything. How to cite a photograph. This is a website. It's the Owl at Purdue. Talks about how to cite in MLA. And this is for actually other common sources. So you'll have to look through here and go all the way down to where a photograph is, because this is citing interviews, then citing speeches and lectures, panel discussions, published conference proceedings, a painting, sculpture, or photograph. This talks all about how to cite that. So it's right here. It's a really simple citation. That would be what goes in your works cited. Or if it were in a book, for example, this would be where it goes in the works cited. If you viewed it on a website, that's what it looks like. And if you had text or something else, there you go. It'd be like that. So that's all right here on the owl, uh, the owl at Purdue. And then finally, we have TinEye image search tool. Now you can use TinEye. It's actually verifying that I'm a human at the moment. This is where you would drag and drop the image here, or if you had the URL, it will basically help you find where that image came from. This is really much more helpful when you have a picture and you're not sure where it came from. You're able to uh, upload it here. It will give you all the different places on the internet where that image lives. You just pick one to cite. That's really all you're doing. Now, of course, there's also Google reverse image lookup if you need to find that image someplace on the internet. But wherever you find your image, make sure you make note of it because it must go in your works cited page. You must cite it. All right, let's see. Last but not least, on our main module page is a really nice video about how to write an analysis essay. Actually, I say that. The Schmoop video is kind of just a tiny reinforcement video. It's actually more tongue in cheek. But, sometimes it's the easier, less heavy videos that kind of stick with us. But that's what this is. Probably should put the Schmoop analysis essay video in there. All right, so that's basically all the different strategies and sources we have for for writing this. Don't remember if I don't think there's any recommended reading. Let me see if it's down here. No, there's no recommended reading that goes with this. So I think it's nope, no chapter work for this particular one. But let's take a look at the assignments. So the assignments that we have due this week, the 4 assignments. The first one is going to be the most important one, I believe. It's going to be your image analysis working thesis and your image. So what I want you to do is when you find your image, I want you to tell me what your working thesis is. And your working thesis should be something along the lines of the message of the image is blank because of blank, blank, and blank. In other words, you're telling me what the message of the image is and 3 ways that the picture shows you what that message is. So, for example, if you choose an advertisement, obviously the message of the image is buy our product. But you would still need to tell me 3 ways that the image is trying to get the consumer to buy the product. So it would be the message of the image is buy this product because of the way it's placed in the ad, because it tells you that it will make you happy if you buy the product, and or the color placement uh, in the ad screams happiness, something like that. So it's really not that big a deal because it's a working thesis. You can change it as you maybe do some research, but I do want to see a preliminary working thesis here so that I can make sure you're on the right track for writing your paper. And I also want you to include your image so I can make sure that it's an image that you can actually write a paper over. I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and every year I get somebody who thinks they can write a paper over an image that just doesn't really have much of a message, and um, they don't believe me, and they still try it anyways, and it ends up not being a great paper. So what I try to do is get these thesis statements, these working thesis statements graded and back to you as soon as possible so you can maybe reverse course or maybe alter your course a bit just to make sure that you're on the right track. So, again, this is probably the most important assignment that we have for this week, and as such, this is the one that's going to count for attendance for this week. So, the image analysis working thesis and image is going to count for attendance. meaning if you don't turn it in on time, you will be counted as absent for the week. So be sure to get that one in on time. It is really the most important one. Now, the second most important assignment for the week is how to write a visual analysis essay. And this is actually a really good video. Let's go. You're just going to, I want you to watch the video and write 3 questions or comments over it, just like
Hi
you would
guys, I'm
be
Tutorfrill, and
if
this
you were
video is
reading
about
a chapter. And this is what I think we did instead of reading a chapter because there just wasn't a suitable chapter in our book for this. But it's actually a pretty good video. It's about 13 minutes. Watch it. Give me 3 questions or comments about it. And that's the second assignment for the week. Third assignment, it's called Blackboard Articles. So it's asking you to look at the 2 web pages that we looked at earlier, the analytical essay outline, which didn't show up right now. If it doesn't show up for the rest of the week, if it's gone forever, it was there earlier today. I don't know what's going on with it. Like I said, I think they were having server maintenance. If it doesn't show up, then simply write your questions or comments over how to write a visual analysis paper. And that is this one right here. Okay. So questions or comments over those 2 or 1, assuming uh, it shows up or they both show up. And then questions and comments over this one video. Finally, last but not least, our last assignment for the week is called 2 photographs. Now, some of you, I believe, have actually already done this assignment. It's a discussion board. It was somehow open at the beginning of the course and it shouldn't have been. So it's been closed back up until now. So this one is a little bit more involved and it is a discussion board because I do want you guys to talk about it. But you need to read through this article, and then this article is about these 2 pictures down here where they're doing a compare and contrast. And this article is actually a student written essay that is a compare and contrast of the 2 images. Now, we are not doing a compare and contrast, but I wanted you to see this as an example of what a good visual analysis essay looks like. And then there's 3 questions to be answered down here. And this is what you're answering in the discussion board, 3 questions. And then you need to respond to 2 classmates' posts. So there you go, as the normal. And that's what we're doing for this week. The visual analysis itself will be just like our other papers, 750 words, um, analyzing an image, and I will go over that in more detail next week. But for this week, the most important thing is that you read through the information that's here in the module, all of these different things, read through those carefully. You find an image that you would like to write an analysis of. My suggestion is something simple, uh, probably an ad, like a static ad out of a magazine, would be good. Find an image, get a working thesis ready, turn that in as soon as you can so that I can give you some feedback on it, and then do these other 3 assignments as well for the week. So if you have any questions, please be sure to email me. I'll be getting your other papers back to you as soon as possible. Have a great week.